Hello everyone, we're just finishing off this fascinating story about Rossini and Beethoven in 1822. So we just got to the point where Rossini was at this gala event at Prince Metternich's house, and it was followed by a concert. They listened with religious respect to a Beethoven trio. And it says the new masterwork was listened to with religious respect and obtained a resplendent success. Hearing it in the midst of all those mundane magnificences, I said to myself sadly, that perhaps at that very moment the great man was creating in the isolation of his attic some work of deep inspiration, destined, like his previous ones, to initiate into sublime beauties this same brilliant aristocracy from which he was excluded, and which, given over to its pleasures, did not worry about the misery of him who had furnished the pleasures. In other words, Rossini's making a very important point, really. He's just been to see Beethoven is living in a garret in apparent squalor. He's now in this grand party with all the aristocracy of Vienna, who are all listening religiously to Beethoven's music. But they're not bothered that Beethoven himself is living in awful circumstances and deaf and ill. And in fact, when Rossini says that rather profound thing, where he says, I said to myself sadly that perhaps at that very moment the great man was creating in the isolation of his attic some work of deep inspiration. Well, in fact, Beethoven was doing precisely that. He was writing the last 3 piano sonatas in 1822. So he really was getting better. I mean, his compositional powers had never been on a higher level. One could easily say in 1822 he was a greater composer than he'd ever been. But Rossini is horrified that Viennese society is so oblivious, so impervious to Beethoven's sufferings. And he goes on, not having succeeded with my attempt to start an annuity fund for Beethoven, I did not lose courage. I tried to collect the necessary funds for buying him a house. I did obtain a few promises of subscription, but inclusive of my own, the final result was very meagre. Consequently, I had to abandon this second project too. The general answer was, you do not know Beethoven. On the day after he finds himself the owner of a house, he will sell it. He will never know how to adjust himself to a permanent home. He feels the need of changing his lodgings every 6 months and his servant every 6 weeks. And of course, there's some truth in that. Beethoven was very, very restless, always moving house and always sacking his staff. He was hopeless. So it's sad. This is a sad story. It's rather touching that Rossini cared, though, and was keen to go to some lengths to try and sort out Beethoven's circumstances.